Nobody saw this coming. Nobody was ready for it. And yet, in one jaw-dropping interview, Tamar ripped the curtain back on a family secret so ugly, so volatile, that it instantly detonated across social media. What started as whispers about casting drama suddenly exploded into accusations of betrayal, erased footage, private addresses leaked, and a line that can never be uncrossed, putting a child in danger. Fans thought they were watching reality TV tension. What Tamar revealed made it clear this was never about ratings. This was about control, silence, and fear. The internet froze the moment Tamar said it out loud. Not hinted. Not implied. Said. Evelyn and Towanda didn't just disagree about Ashlee appearing on the show. They shut it down. Hard. No discussion. No compromise. And according to Tamar, the reason wasn't petty jealousy or storyline politics. It was because Ashlee knew things. Things that could shatter the family's carefully polished image forever. Within minutes, clips were clipped, reposted, slowed down, and dissected. Group chats erupted. Twitter went to war. TikTok creators stitched themselves into exhaustion trying to connect dots Tamar had just lit on fire. And the scariest part. Tamar didn't sound dramatic. She sounded done. Calm. Calculated. Like someone who had been holding this in for years and finally decided she was no longer protecting people who never protected her. And just when fans thought it couldn't get darker, Tamar dropped one sentence that changed everything. This wasn't about me. This was about my child. That's when the story stopped being entertainment and became something much more dangerous. The moment Tamar finally opened her mouth, everything people thought they knew about this family collapsed at once. Not slowly. Not politely. It imploded. Because this wasn't a salty confessional, or a reality TV vent session. This was Tamar speaking like someone who had been cornered, silenced, and blamed for years, and had finally decided she was done protecting people who never protected her. The internet didn't just listen. It leaned forward, because her tone wasn't performative. It was controlled. And that's what made it terrifying. According to Tamar, the real fracture didn't start on camera. It started long before producers rolled, long before viewers saw awkward dinners or tense side eyes. It began the moment certain conversations were declared off-limits. Not disagreements. Not arguments. Entire topics. Names that could not be spoken. Stories that could not be referenced. And at the center of that invisible line was Ashlee. Tamar made it painfully clear that Ashlee wasn't excluded because she was irrelevant. She was excluded because she was inconvenient. She explained that whenever Ashlee's perspective came up, whenever she tried to bring her into discussions that mattered, the temperature in the room changed. Calls stopped being returned. Meetings suddenly couldn't be scheduled. Producers allegedly shifted gears. And Evelyn and Towanda, who the audience believed were just trying to keep the peace, reportedly became immovable walls. No Ashlee. No debate. No explanation that made sense. What shook fans was Tamar's insistence that this wasn't about jealousy, ego, or screen time. She said those were distractions people used because the real reason was uglier. Ashlee, according to Tamar, knew too much about situations the family never wanted documented. Not gossip. Not rumors. Personal experiences. Family incidents. Allegations that were never meant to leave private conversations. And once Ashlee made it clear she wasn't going to water down her truth for the sake of a storyline, the door quietly closed. Then Tamar took it somewhere nobody expected. Safety. Not feelings. Not reputations. Safety. She revealed that during this same period of tension, her private home address was leaked. Not accidentally. Not once. Multiple times. Sent through different methods. To someone who had no business knowing where she lived. And the most chilling detail. The property wasn't even in her name. Which meant this information didn't come from public records. It came from someone with access. Someone close. She described the feeling in a way that cut through the noise instantly. Being robbed once changes how you breathe in your own house. Being violated like that doesn't fade. It rewires you. She said her family knew this. They knew how much she spent on security. They knew she was raising her child with hypervigilance because of past trauma. And yet, somehow, her location still ended up in the wrong hands. That's when this stopped being about reality TV and became something far more disturbing. When Tamar asked the question, "Who gave out my address?" she said the room went cold. Not defensive. Not confused. Cold. And instead of answers, she got distance. Legal letters. Cease and desist warnings. According to Tamar, those letters weren't about protecting peace. They were about stopping her from asking the wrong questions out loud. And what stunned fans was the timeline. These legal moves didn't come after explosive scenes aired. They came before. Before weddings. Before sit-downs. Before the public even knew there was a problem. She said when she finally tried to address everything at the family table, she wasn't trying to attack anyone. She came to talk about Ashlee. She came to talk about boundaries. She came to talk about her child's safety. But instead, she was painted as aggressive. As combative. As the problem. Tamar didn't deny raising her voice. She explained why. When your back is against the wall and nobody is listening, calm stops being an option. What made this section of her story hit harder was her clarity about intent. She wasn't trying to expose anyone for entertainment. She wasn't trying to humiliate her sisters. She said if this were about fame, she could have said much more, much earlier. Instead, she stayed quiet for years. She played the role. She absorbed the edits. She let people believe she was the difficult one. Until the consequences became real enough that silence felt like betrayal of herself and her child. As she spoke, fans began connecting dots they hadn't wanted to see before. The episodes where Tamar looked isolated. The moments where serious conversations abruptly cut away. The unexplained absences from major family events. Tamar confirmed that she didn't just miss those moments, she was uninvited. And not after blow-ups. Before them. Which reframed everything viewers thought they understood about who caused what. She said the most painful part wasn't losing access to a show or a storyline. It was realizing that when things got uncomfortable, the family chose optics over honesty. Image over accountability. And Ashlee became collateral damage, because acknowledging her experiences would mean acknowledging cracks they'd worked too hard to seal. Tamar made one thing crystal clear. Supporting Ashlee wasn't optional for her. It was non-negotiable. She said her niece spoke her truth on her own terms, and Tamar stood beside her because that's what family is supposed to do. The punishment for that loyalty was swift and silent. Invitations rescinded. Communication severed. Narratives flipped. Suddenly Tamar was putting the family on blast, when in her words, the truth had been there all along. As this part of the story spread online, fans noticed Evelyn and Towanda's lack of response. No statements. No clarifications. No denials. And in the vacuum, speculation exploded. Was silence strategic? Was it legal? Or was it because addressing Tamar's claims would open doors they couldn't close? Tamar ended this portion of her story with a line that landed like a warm Scenes that ran long were suddenly shortened. Emotional exchanges were reframed. Context vanished. Tamar said she began to notice that whenever she tried to explain herself fully, the moment never made it to air the same way. What viewers saw as Tamar overreacting, she says, was the aftermath of conversations the audience never heard. Insiders allegedly close to production claimed there were internal debates about Ashlee's presence. Not whether she'd be interesting, but whether she'd be controllable. That word alone sent fans spiraling. Because controllable doesn't mean disruptive, it means unpredictable. Someone who won't stick to the approved version of events. Someone who won't clean up language for the sake of a legacy edit. And if that's true, it explains why Evelyn and Towanda reportedly became firm gatekeepers rather than mediators. Tamar described feeling like the family dynamic had quietly turned into a hierarchy of who was safe for the brand and who wasn't. Not based on love. Based on risk. And Ashlee, by simply telling her own story without softening the edges, became a liability. Tamar said that's when loyalty started being framed as betrayal. Support started being framed as sabotage. And suddenly, Tamar wasn't just defending her niece. She was defending the right to speak honestly at all. Things escalated when legal language entered the family space. Cease and desist letters don't show up in healthy conversations. Tamar emphasized that these weren't sent after things blew up publicly. They were sent when questions were being asked privately. That timing mattered. To her, it signaled that the issue wasn't damage control, it was prevention. Preventing certain topics from ever being addressed on camera or off. And then came the moment that still has fans arguing online, the wedding. Tamar revealed she wasn't just absent. She was uninvited. Not after a fight. Not after a public outburst. But before the family table conversation ever happened. Which means the narrative viewers were given, that Tamar caused the tension, might have been backwards. The exclusion came first. The reaction came later. When Tamar explained this, social media erupted. Clips were stitched together. Old episodes re-watched. Fans started noticing how often Tamar appeared isolated in group scenes, how often her concerns were brushed aside or reframed as too much. Suddenly, moments that once felt like reality TV drama felt like something else entirely, containment. Behind the scenes, alleged messages began circulating. Nothing officially confirmed, but enough to stir chaos. Screenshots of group chats where people debated keeping things light. DMs hinting at not opening old wounds. Vague warnings about protecting the family image. None of it explicitly naming Ashlee, but all of it pointing in the same direction. Silence was being actively maintained. Tamar said what hurt most wasn't disagreement, it was dismissal. The refusal to even engage with the substance of what Ashlee was saying. Instead of asking hard questions, the family allegedly focused on how it would look if those questions were aired. And that's when Tamar realized the line had already been drawn. You could either protect the image or protect the truth. Not both. The address leak resurfaced here in a way that made everything darker. Tamar reiterated that her living situation was deliberately private. Not under her name. Not searchable. Which meant whoever shared it didn't stumble onto it, they were given it. And when she demanded accountability, she says the response wasn't concern. It was legal pressure. That's when fear entered the picture. She wasn't just upset. She was alarmed. Because this wasn't about hurt feelings. This was about safety. Her safety. Her child's safety. And the fact that the family didn't rally around that concern, but instead closed ranks, raised a question nobody wanted to ask out loud. What were they more afraid of, harm coming to Tamar, or information coming out? As these claims spread, Fan reactions split sharply. Some accused Tamar of dragging private matters into the spotlight. Others argued that the spotlight was the only reason the truth was even visible. Hashtags trended. Reaction videos flooded timelines. Former supporters of the show admitted they felt manipulated. Not by Tamar, but by the edit. Celebrity reactions only fueled the fire. A few vague posts about family boundaries and choosing peace popped up from people adjacent to the situation, then disappeared. Silence followed. And in celebrity culture, silence is never neutral. It's strategic. Tamar, meanwhile, doubled down on one thing: she never asked for sides. She asked for answers. Who shared her address? Why Ashlee was blocked from participating? Why legal threats replaced conversations? And why she was punished for refusing to pretend everything was fine. She said she could have stayed quiet forever if the consequences were just about her reputation. But once her child was involved, once safety became the issue, she stopped negotiating with silence. That's when the gloves came off, even if her voice stayed steady. The most chilling moment of this section came when Tamar admitted she no longer trusted intentions. Not producers. Not family members. Not even the audiences. Because once you realize truth can be edited, controlled, and legally discouraged, you start questioning everything. Every smile. Every apology. Every "let's move forward." As Section 2 closed, one thing became clear: this wasn't about Ashlee being kept off the show. It was about control over the narrative. Who gets to speak? Who gets believed? And who gets erased quietly while everyone else smiles for the camera? And the question hanging in the air now isn't whether Tamar went too far. It's whether the truth she's hinting at goes much further than anyone is ready for. By the time the fallout from Tamar's second wave of claims hit, the conversation had completely shifted. This was no longer about one niece being excluded from a show. It wasn't even about one sister feeling iced out. It had become a referendum on the entire Braxton family dynamic: who controls the story, who gets protected, and who pays the price when uncomfortable truths refuse to stay buried. According to Tamar, the aftermath was colder than anything viewers ever saw on camera. Calls stopped getting returned. Group texts went silent. Information that once flowed freely suddenly felt rationed. She said it wasn't explosive arguments that hurt the most, it was the coordinated quiet. The kind that makes you feel like you've been voted off your own family without ever being told why. What rattled fans was Tamar's claim that conversations about boundaries only appeared after Ashlee spoke up. Before that, disagreements were framed as normal family friction. After that, the language shifted to protection, reputation, and optics. Tamar said it became clear that some topics weren't just uncomfortable, they were forbidden. And anyone who refused to drop them was treated as a threat, not a relative. Insiders alleged that producers were quietly advised to avoid certain names and keep scenes moving whenever discussions drifted toward unresolved family issues. No direct confirmation, but enough overlapping whispers to spark alarm. Fans began noticing jump cuts, awkward transitions, emotional beats that felt truncated. Suddenly, moments that should have landed heavy felt oddly hollow, like something had been removed on purpose. Tamar claimed this wasn't accidental. She said it felt like watching reality television turn into damage control in real time. Not to protect feelings, but to protect a version of the family that could still be sold, syndicated, and celebrated. And in that version, there was no room for Ashlee's experience, Tamar's questions, or any narrative that suggested deep fractures, instead of surface-level drama. The backlash was swift and brutal. Tamar was accused of being bitter, dramatic, ungrateful. Some fans said she was airing dirty laundry. back. Scenes once dismissed as sibling rivalry was suddenly reinterpreted as containment. Fans started asking whether Tamar had been playing the villain in a story she didn't write. Celebrity reactions added fuel to the fire. A few vague posts about truth always coming out appeared from industry figures, then vanished. Others posted about family loyalty without naming names. Every indirect comment was screenshot, analyzed, and folded into the narrative. The mess felt inescapable. Tamar, for her part, didn't soften her stance. She said she didn't regret standing with Ashlee. Not for 1 second. Because in her eyes, the real betrayal wasn't speaking out, it was expecting silence in exchange for belonging. She said families shouldn't require censorship to survive. And if they do, something is already broken. The most unsettling moment came when Tamar admitted she no longer felt safe being fully honest in shared spaces. Not physically, emotionally. She described feeling like every word could be weaponized, every concern reframed as instability. That's when she stopped trying to convince anyone and started documenting everything. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Fans immediately latched onto that line. Documenting everything. It sparked theories, speculation, fear. Was there more she hadn't said? More she was holding back? Tamar didn't confirm or deny. She just said this story wasn't finished, and that people shouldn't assume they know the whole truth based on what made it to air. As the dust settled, one thing became undeniable: the Braxton family image had cracked. Not shattered, but fractured enough that light was getting in. And once that happens, pretending everything is fine becomes harder than telling the truth. This wasn't the explosive showdown people expected. There was no screaming match finale. No dramatic reconciliation montage. Instead, there was distance, uncertainty, and a lot of unanswered questions. Why was Ashlee really blocked? Who decided it? Why did legal language enter family conversations so quickly? And why was Tamar treated like the problem for asking questions that still haven't been answered? The final beat of this chapter isn't closure, it's tension. The kind that lingers long after the cameras stop rolling. Tamar has made it clear she's done protecting narratives that don't protect her. Whether that leads to healing or deeper division remains to be seen. What's certain is this: viewers are no longer watching passively. They are questioning edits, re-examining dynamics, and realizing that reality TV doesn't just show family conflict, it can also hide it. And as Tamar's voice continues to cut through the noise, one uncomfortable truth hangs in the air. The ugliest part of this story may not be what was said, but what was never allowed to be heard. Before you click away, understand this: stories like this don't fade out quietly. They either get buried, or they get exposed. And what you just watched is the kind of truth that makes people uncomfortable, because it forces everyone to choose a side. This isn't just about Tamar. It's about who gets silenced in families, who controls the narrative, and who gets labeled difficult the moment they stop protecting everyone else's image. If this story made you feel tense, emotional, or conflicted, that's not accidental. That's what happens when real issues finally crack through a polished surface. Now here's the reality: if you don't engage, this conversation disappears. Algorithms don't care about truth, they care about reaction. So if you believe these stories deserve to be heard, hit like right now. That single click keeps this from being quietly pushed aside. Drop a comment and say what you really think. Do you believe Tamar crossed a line, or do you think she was pushed into a corner? Should family loyalty require silence? Or is protecting your child and your peace non-negotiable? Your opinion matters more than you realize, and trust me, people are reading. And most importantly, subscribe. Because this story is not over. Responses haven't come yet. Receipts haven't dropped yet. And when they do, you'll want to be here before the narrative gets rewritten again. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Because the ugliest truths never come out all at once, they surface piece by piece. And the next piece could change everything.